What is churn rate?
Churn rate is how quickly people get sick of something. And so it's a kid will play with a toy for 5 minutes and then get sick of it and move to something else. And that's churn rate. And so the faster the churn rate, the worse it is, because people get sick of your stuff at a much quicker rate. And so how if you're flipping through the channels, you land on a show. How long are you going to give that before you flip to the next channel? On the radio, how long are you going to give a song before you flip to the next song? And so churn rates typically in a competitive environment are very high because there's so many options now. I'm just like bouncing from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And that back in the 50s when there was just radio, then people would sit and listen to one radio station for hours and just listen to radio dramas and news, and they wouldn't flip to anything because there was only one thing that they could do. Now with all the stuff that we have to do and all the entertainment options, the oversaturated tsunami of entertainment that is around us all the time, churn rates are very high, and that's bad for creators. So we now have to think of how we create, how do we create a brand that lowers the churn rate of people? How do we keep them engaged for longer and in more meaningful ways into our brand and our stories? And that's something very important because the longer you can engage the audience and the longer the valuable engagement takes place, the more chance you have to then convert them into now a loyal audience member, or ultimately to what I call a brand evangelist, somebody who's not just watching your stuff, but actually helping market your stuff. Hey, did you see the new Game of Thrones this week? Hey, you should check out this show. You can go watch this movie because it's awesome. If you can convert them into that, that's the sweet spot, because then when you can get people, one, loyal to your brand, two, that are so loyal that they're marketing your brand, you start to solve some of that P&A issue we had talked about earlier of having to rely on so much P&A because you've activated your fan base to do something valuable. But you're never going to activate the fan base if they only engage with your stories for 10 seconds at a time. So now we have to slow that down, get them engaged, and have that engagement be valuable. And if you can do that, then all of a sudden you've separated yourself from the marketplace and solved a major problem in the industry, which is these high churn rate issues.
So does that mean we keep our content shorter or give them breaks?
Well, it depends. It depends on your content. But the thing that people love most is story. We live in an entertainment culture, and people love story more than anything else. And so again, whereas attention spans may be seemingly low, they're no longer low if you can engage them with story. If you have a great story, they'll watch it for 10 hours in a row, and that's fine. So a 10-hour binge watch is a very low churn rate because they're watching for 10 hours, they're not turning off. So this is where technique and craft come into play. If you can understand how to hook them fast, give them new and better things as you go through the story, then all of a sudden you're starting to lower that churn rate. But at the same time, it's how do we create multiple engagements that, if you're operating just in network television, you have one hour engagement every week, and that's it. And so now between your one hour engagements, you have a week in between, right? So now if we can start filling that week with some other things, so as a companion web series like they do on AMC, maybe a digital comic that gives them more valuable parts of the story that bridges the gap between episodes. What you do every single time that you have your audience engage with valuable content, valuable story, then slowly you're going to start to lower their churn rate until you get them to the point that they'll watch your stuff for 10 hours. Typically, they won't do that at the beginning. It's a process of getting them to that point to where they'll say, okay, I'll watch your stuff for 10 hours. I'll watch 60 hours of your content in a month through a binge watch because you've spent the time and made an investment into me as an audience member to a point where I'm willing to give you this investment into your brand. right? And so, and the only way to get them to that point is to have as much and as many valuable engagements as humanly possible. And the thing that they value most is story. So it's not just marketing and promotions. That's a big transmedia misconception that it's all advertising and marketing. It's really, it's the best is story-based stuff. How do I create story-based engagement? So like at the South by Southwest, they had the show Bates Motel created a new a replica of the Bates Motel that you could actually rent out a room and stay in while you're at South by Southwest. That's cool marketing, but it's not transmedia because it didn't give you any more of the story. Because what happens is when it was time to go for the festival, they would open the door and they would leave the room and they'd come back at night, and they have very limited time in the room. But if for some way, like they took a picture off the wall and all of a sudden Norman had written a message behind that picture. If they would take the Gideon's Bible out of the desk and open up, and it's not a Gideon's Bible at all. If there's an object in there, or maybe it's a journal that's been written by Norman, giving more insight into his character, insight into some storylines. There's creaky floorboards that you could pop up and the stuff underneath there. Like you flip over the mattress and there's stuff in the mattress, maybe stuff actually hidden inside the mattress you have to rip open to find. If you can extend the story in such a way that the hotel room becomes part of the story. Now what's happened is you've created longer points of engagement for that fan base. And that the fans that are in the room maybe don't even want to go outside because the whole room is part of the story that they love. Presumably they don't stay in the Bates Motel unless they watch that Bates Motel show. Or even if they do, maybe it's a mechanism to get them to watch the show. But you're going to have a better chance to get them to watch the show is if you start to seed the story and extend the story in a really interesting way. So maybe you never watched the show before, but based on this experience that you have and all these weird little story clues and interactions that you discover in this room, now it makes you you have a greater chance of checking it out, far beyond just a marketing experience. And so how do we create lots of really valuable story-based engagements for the fan base. And every single one of those engagements creates a lower churn rate. And so maybe the churn rate's very high, and for somebody that's I'm ADD, I'm distracted, I like to do 100 things, I never watch long form TV, I just like watching web stuff, YouTube stuff, all this stuff. If you can just slowly start giving story-based engagement to that audience member, and then you start to lower the churn rate, lower the churn rate, lower the churn rate, lower the churn rate, to eventually you can get them to the point to say, okay, I'll watch your stuff for 10 hours in a sitting because you've invested into me so much already. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
Okay, great.